Hey guys, tonight we're sinking into something a little warmer, a little quieter, and honestly, a little cozier than anything you've probably stepped into today. You're standing right here with me, on the edge of an old Joseon era house. The wooden door sliding open with a soft sigh, as if it has been waiting centuries just for you. Cold air nips at your ankles for one last moment, and then there it is. That first breath of rising warmth from the floor, you feel it before you fully understand it, curling up through the soles of your feet like some gentle creature welcoming you home. And trust me, if you lived back then, you'd cling to this warm patch of floor like your life depended on it. You probably wouldn't survive a single night on those bare, frozen hills without it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening right now, tell me where you are in the world and what time it is for you. I always love seeing how far these quiet little journeys travel. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step forward, and the floor greets you again with that rising heat, smooth, steady, almost shy at first. It's not like stepping onto a heated mat or modern underfloor pipes. No, this is older, deeper, the kind of warmth that seems to come from the bones of the earth itself. As you lower yourself onto the wooden planks, they creak under your weight, and the warmth blooms outward beneath you. It's a startling contrast from the cold wind outside, and for a moment, you just sit there, letting your body melt, one vertebra at a time. The house itself is modest, low beams darkened from smoke, walls made of paper doors that glow faintly from the lantern light outside, and the faint scent of wood ash drifting in from somewhere beneath you. You're still learning to recognize the details of this world, how the floors weren't just floors, but living structures that crackled with fire just hours before. You brush your palm across the surface, and the heat pulses softly back. It feels like resting your hand on the back of a sleeping animal. As your eyes adjust, you imagine the family who might have stepped across this same warm floor centuries ago. A scholar adjusting his robes, a child rubbing sleep from his eyes, someone's grandmother feeding the fire outside so the rooms could stay warm through the night. The ondol system wasn't just a technical invention, it was a rhythm of daily life. The cold of Korean winters could be merciless sharp winds slicing through valleys, ice forming on the eaves, and even ink freezing in its pots. People didn't just want warmth, they needed it to survive. And here you are, experiencing that first moment exactly as they might have. The room is quiet except for a gentle crackle somewhere in the distance. It's hard to tell if it's the wind brushing past the wooden slats or the last of the fire, settling beneath the floor's labyrinth of stones. You lean closer, listening. The heat murmurs underfoot like a whispering stream. As you shift your legs, you notice how the warmth is strongest along the back wall and slowly fades toward the door, a subtle gradient that isn't accidental at all. Engineers of the past, without calculators, without blueprints, without a single how to heat your home efficiently YouTube tutorial, managed to build floors that warmed from back to front with precision. That's your first tiny miracle of the night. You inhale, and there it is, again, the faint sweetness of burnt pine. The scent clings to the air like fragile memory. You imagine ashes drifting through stone tunnels, carrying warmth while leaving smoke behind. But that discovery is for the next part of our journey. Right now, you're simply letting your body settle into the heat. Your cold fingers spread onto the floorboards, and you can almost feel your pulse sinking with the warmth rising from below. And yes, if you're wondering, ancient Koreans absolutely judged each other on the quality of their ondol floors. You think modern people argue over thermostats? Imagine entire families arguing about whose floor was hottest. Your in-laws must have really loved you if they let you sleep by the back wall, someone might whisper. A little gossip, warmed over stone. You shift slightly, and as you do, you hear something not loud, but distinct. The slow exhale of heat moving through channels hidden beneath the house. You don't see them, but you picture the long horizontal flues snaking under each room. The fire is outside the main living area, but the warmth finds its way inside like a ghost that knows the path by heart. It's a strange idea if you think about it. A house heated from fire that never actually touches the room it warms. Safe, brilliant, and centuries ahead of similar systems elsewhere. As you sit there, feeling the floor breathe beneath you, you realize something almost funny. This ancient heating system is doing its job more smoothly than half the modern radiators you've ever owned. You know, the kind, that one radiator that clangs like an angry demon at 3 a.m., or the heating unit that insists on warming every part of the room except where you happen to be sitting? None of that, just quiet, calm heat. If this floor could speak, it'd say, relax. I've been doing this for 1,000 years. I know what I'm doing. You lean back on your hands, letting your shoulders sink. The warmth creeps slowly up your spine, and you can't help wondering how much time people spent lying exactly like this, spreading books around them, sipping warm tea, or letting the exhaustion of winter settle into something gentler. You look toward the corner of the room where a scholar might once have kept his bamboo brush and inks. Maybe he rested the same way after long nights of copying Confucian classics. Maybe he muttered to himself about exams, and then laughed at his own frustrations because everyone does. No matter the century, and somewhere in this room, though you can't see it yet, are the ashes that once traveled beneath your feet. They're part of the story you've only just entered. Scholars, families, travelers, so many lives shaped by the simple act of warming a floor. You'll follow them soon enough. But for now, you sit in the cradle of that first warmth, letting it seep into your thoughts until the cold outside becomes something distant, like a memory you no longer fully belong to. The crackle softens, the light dims, and the journey beneath your feet has only begun. You stay seated on the warm floor a little longer, letting that first gentle heat settle into your legs before curiosity tugs you forward. It starts as a faint tickle along the wooden planks, a soft shift of temperature that makes you tilt your head like you're listening to the house breathe. And then you notice it, a whisper of motion beneath the floorboards. Not sound exactly, but presence. Smoke moving where smoke shouldn't normally go. You lean forward, your palms gliding across the warm surface as you inch toward the back of the room. The warmth thickens there, collecting like a small, invisible pool. Your fingertips hover over a spot where the heat rises in a delicate wave, and when you press your ear to the floor, you imagine the sound not flames crackling, but something gentler, like the soft rumble of a sleepy animal shifting in its den. You've stepped into the realm of the ondol secret pathways now, the hidden roads of smoke and ash that wander beneath you like threads of a forgotten map. You ease down onto your stomach, cheek pressed to the warm floor, and breathe in the faint scent of soot. It's comforting in a strange way, like the memory of campfires, but quieter, calmer. You realize that this house is heated not by a fire roaring in the middle of the room, nothing that dramatic or dangerous, but by something far more clever. The fire itself lives outside. It burns in a small hearth at ground level, and the smoke creeps through stone tunnels, slipping under the floor, warming everything it touches before escaping through a distant chimney. You picture the smoke's journey, sliding in low, hugging the earth like a cat slinking through tall grass, then spreading into wide, shallow channels built carefully by hands that understood airflow centuries before it became scientific jargon. The stones are arranged just so, the slopes lined at precise angles, all to encourage the heat to linger while the smoke continues forward. Moving like a traveler who knows their route by instinct, you lift your head, imagining the family who once tended this fire, someone crouching outside in the cold, feeding pieces of wood into the hearth, coaxing the flames until the smoke traveled smoothly beneath the house. The oldest son might have checked the flues for blockages each week, tapping them with a long stick to shake loose ash. The grandmother might have warned the children not to run outside barefoot to check the fire because, yes, even hundreds of years ago, kids still made questionable life choices. Some things never change. As you sit up, the floor radiates steady heat through your hands, and you try to trace the path of the smoke across the room. Under your left palm warm, under your right hot, a little to the front cooler. The ondol doesn't heat the room evenly. It heats it thoughtfully. The back of the room stays warmest, the perfect place to sleep during winter nights when the wind claws at the doors. And the front stays cooler, letting people adjust their comfort by simply shifting closer or farther from the warmth. It's like an ancient version of sleeping positions. Dear couples know to welfa, I want warmth zone, and the don't touch me, it's too hot zone. The ondol understood relationships long before couples therapy existed. You slide a little closer to the wall, letting the richer warmth pool beneath your knees. The stone layers deep under the floor capture the heat slowly, then release it over hours, like a gentle, patient exhale. And your mind wanders to how strange this must have seemed to early outsiders. Travelers from colder climates arrived expecting to sleep next to a fireplace, only to find themselves on the floor on purpose. Even now, you imagine someone from a modern city apartment inspecting the heating tunnels with the same confusion as when they open a dishwasher for the first time after years of hand-washing dishes. Your attention drifts to a faint groove in the floor. You run a fingertip along it, wondering if it marks where a panel once lifted for cleaning the tunnels. Ashes would build up inside those flues over weeks, thickening like grist. Families cleaned them regularly to keep the heat flowing smoothly. And here comes the strange fact, the one nearly lost in the folds of history. In some mountain villages, people believed that ash from the ondol tunnels could protect homes from evil spirits if sprinkled in a certain pattern outside the door. Not many remember that now, but it lingers like smoke in a forgotten jar. You let out a small breath, the warmth easing tension from your shoulders, and for a moment you wonder who first realized the magic of channeling smoke under floors instead of letting it choke the room. Someone must have noticed that when smoke escaped under a raised stone or through a crevice, the floor grew warm. You imagine that moment, someone squatting beside a weak fire, rubbing cold hands, suddenly feeling unexpected heat beneath their feet, a spark of possibility flaring brighter than the flame itself. But as with all old stories, the details blur. Kuk spgrvn, contran luan va viak, how la engan gai chutnca thit, kn undel gi, the vn dan now gi thien sai, va lathien gi ri tu nen ke quan shi bm ne. Was it an accidental discovery during the early Three Kingdoms period? Was it gradually refined over centuries of harsh winters? Historian debates flow like the smoke themselves, meandering, persistent, and oddly soothing when you listen long enough. You shift again, feeling the heat settle deeper. The floor beneath you vibrates faintly as the smoke moves through the stone channels, and you start to follow the trail in your mind. You imagine the smoke entering the first tunnel low narrow, hugging the ground, then branching into wider paths under your room. It lingers under the thickest stones because that's where heat clings best. The stones soak it in, storing warmth like a bank account you can withdraw from slowly over the night. By morning, the fire might be long gone, but the stones still breathe warmth upward. When you close your eyes, you can almost see it, a ribbon of gray drifting through the tunnels, swirling lazily, warming the stones as it goes. A living thing moving quietly under your feet. A secret companion to everyone who lived in houses like this. A silent co-author in 1,000 nights of studying, sleeping, dreaming. You press your hand flat against the floor again. A steady heat, a pulse of earthbound warmth, and you really feel how ingenious this system is. It's not loud, not flashy, not something that calls attention to itself. It's the opposite of modern technology that beeps, pings, buzzes, and demands firmware updates at the least convenient moment. It just works. Night after night, winter after winter. You take one slow breath, and the warmth fills your chest like a quiet promise. You follow the smoke in your imagination all the way to the chimney at the far end of the house, where it finally escapes its journey complete. And you sit there, savoring the afterglow of its passage. This is only the beginning of understanding how the ondol shaped minds, homes, and centuries of thought. But for now, you're here listening to smoke, feeling warmth, and learning the ancient language of the floor beneath you. And as that last curl of heat fades beneath your feet, you drift deeper into the hushed interior of the scholar's world, letting the warm floor lead you toward a quieter corner of the house. You don't realize it at first, but the temperature rises by just a whisper, like a secret spoken close to your ear, and suddenly you're standing where the young minds of Joseon spent countless hours fighting off the cold. For the sake of knowledge, it's strange how a single step can pull you from smoke and ashes into the sanctuary of thought. But here you are, feeling the floor cradle your souls the way a soft, old quilt might cradle a cat who refuses to move. You pause, your breath settling into the stillness. The room is small, almost modest, but unmistakably dedicated to studia, place where paper stones, brushes, and books form the quiet geometry of young ambition. You can feel the cold outside biting at the wooden walls, almost knocking politely. But the warmth beneath you answers back with a steady, confident hum. And that's when you start to sense why so many scholars through the centuries clung to this heat, depended on it, even adored it in a way that might make modern people wonder if heated floors were the secret crush of the entire Confucian era. Your fingers reach toward a low table, the surface smooths from decades of use, and you imagine yourself as one of those scholars, wrapped in thick cotton robes, knees tucked in, mind sharpening like a knife as the warmth works its way into your bones. You notice how your spine relaxes, how your shoulders lower, how the very ability to think seems tied to the comfort surrounding you. It's as if your brain itself leans closer to the heat, like someone leaning closer to a campfire to hear a story better. You remember now, Confucian education was nothing if not intense. Days of memorizing the classics, nights spent reciting passages aloud, the constant pressure to become a moral compass for society, exams that could change your entire life. And yet, imagine doing all of that while the wind rattled your shutters and the cold crawled up your sleeves like an overfamiliar cat. The scholars needed warmth not just to stay comfortable, they needed it to keep their minds agile, their ink flowing, their fingers from stiffening around a brush. You can almost hear them. Heaven may test our virtue, but does it have to freeze our toes? You kneel near the floor and feel that gentle pulse of heat again. The ondol wasn't just heating, it was thinking. In its own way, it provided the atmosphere in which thoughts could bloom. It's almost poetic how a system so ancient could be so therapeutic. Even modern psychologists talk about ambient temperature affecting cognition, but Joseon scholars figured that out long before the field of cognitive science existed. They didn't need research, they just needed to stay awake at 3 a.m. without losing feeling in their fingers. Outside, the wind shifts. A brief hiss slips through the rafters, and the flame that heats the ondol flickers in the distant furnace room. You imagine the servant tending the fire, adding wood, adjusting airflow, making sure the scholars never dipped back into cold. It's a tiny detail, barely noticeable, but it meant everything. And strangely enough, you also sense one of those odd facts history likes to hide in the margins. Some households intentionally used certain stones under the floor because they believed those stones held thoughts better. No one can really prove whether that ever made a scholar smarter, but you can't deny it adds charm to the system, like putting a motivational quote under your mattress and hoping it seeps upward. You walk further into the room and almost flip on a stray brush someone left behind. The humor of it hits you. A scholar from centuries ago might have tripped over that same spot, cursed quietly, and then gone right back to reciting the 4 books. It's comforting in a way. Knowing the past had its own little clumsy moments, and that warm floor, it probably saved more than one scholar from smashing their inkstone in frustration. Warmtoes.com. Mind that's practically a wellness philosophy. But now your attention shifts to something else. The way the windows fog slightly along the bottom edge, the inside stays warm, the outside stays frozen, and the two worlds meet on that thin sheet of glass like rival kingdoms forced to share a border. You imagine how many students pause during their studies to draw a tiny character or doodle a face in that fog, something they'd never admit publicly. Of course, after all, they were supposed to be paragons of discipline, not amateur yet humans have always been the same. Give them a fogged window and they'll draw something on it. It's practically a biological instinct. A sudden realization flickers through your mind. This room isn't warm by accident. The scholars believed a calm environment led to calm judgment. A warm body led to warm insight. They viewed thinking not just as a mental act, but a physical one, something nurtured by breath, posture, temperature, and rhythm. And that warmth beneath your feet is part of that rhythm. You feel it guiding you toward clarity in the same way a dim lamp guides your eyes toward the text in front of you. You sit down fully now, letting the heat embrace you from below. And as you do, you find yourself drifting into the shared memory of thousands of scholars who once did the same. You picture them bent over their books, whispering passages under their breath, sometimes dozing off only to wake when the warmth lulled them too deeply. You hear soft coughs, the rustle of robes, a brush tapping lightly against the ink. There's a kind of music in a quiet symphony of minds at work. A particular story surfaces. During a bitter winter in the 17th century, a group of scholars apparently studied through a cold snap, so severe that even the river froze strange patterns along its surface. The warmth of the ondol was their salvation, allowing them to continue studying while the rest of the world seemed to hold its breath. The tale goes that one scholar even fell asleep on the warm floor, cheek pressed to the stone, and woke thinking he had levitated because the line between warmth and dream blurred too beautifully. Is it true? Maybe, but historians still debate the details. Another odd detail whispers its way into your mind. On exceptionally cold nights, some scholars claimed they could hear the heat. Not literally heat, of course, but the faint crackle of expanding stones, the gentle shift of warmed air moving through the channels. They believed it was the floor, encouraging them, urging them onward. Modern physics would give you a simpler explanation, but where's the charm in that? You brush your hand along the wooden desk once more, feeling the grain, and suddenly you understand why so many records describe winter study sessions as both grueling and strangely comforting. The scholars weren't just fighting the cold, they were leaning into the warmth, into the structure that held them steady. The ondol wasn't just a technology, it was a companion, a presence in the room, like the quiet friend who sits beside you while you work, saying nothing but offering silent encouragement. And you, sitting here now, feel the same thing. Your breath softens, your shoulders relax, the world outside dims, the warmth below settles you into a state of mind where thoughts begin to glide rather than stumble. And as you close your eyes for a moment, just to feel everything more clearly, you can't help but smile at the idea that even centuries ago, people knew a warm floor makes a warm mind. Maybe that's why you're here now, walking through memory, through heat, through the quiet discipline of the past, because as odd as it sounds, sometimes the warmth under your feet can tell a story better than any book on the shelf. You settle deeper into that warm glow beneath your feet, letting the rising heat relax the back of your legs as you drift farther into the quiet rhythm of the scholar's world. The evening around you deepens into an indigo calm, even though a thin line of smoke still clings to the rafters like a lazy cat stretching its limbs. You shift slightly, hearing the soft crack of the ondol stones expanding, and you follow the scholars as they slip into their nightly ritual, a ritual that has happened thousands of times before. Always in this same gentle hush, you kneel beside the low wooden table, watching as the young men spread out their stacks of mulberry paper with the same careful tenderness someone today might show their brand new tablet. The grain of the paper glows faintly under the lamplight, and you realize how fragile it is, how easily ink could bleed too far. How one mistake late at night, a smudge, a misstroke, could ruin hours of work. No pressure, right? If you were here as an actual student, your hands might be trembling right now. At least tonight, you're only observing, drifting on warmth and quiet. One scholar sits nearest the brazier, though the fire feeding the ondol is outside the building. What he has here is only a small open flame for light, but he holds his hands above it as if absorbing its last bit of courage. His fingers are thin, an ink-blackened callus running along his knuckle. You reach out, almost instinctively, mirroring the gesture, feeling the rising heat from the floor swirl around your palms like a slow, comforting tide. The process begins with ink, always ink. A scholar pulls the inkstone close and drizzles a thin line of water across its flat surface. Then he picks up the ink stick, long, glossy, and carved with delicate patterns, and begins to grind it in small, steady circles. The sound is soft but persistent. Whisper, 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 like a cat brushing against your ankle. There's something soothing about it, like white noise. Or that fan you left running back home to drown out neighbors who vacuum at ridiculous hours. You lean closer and catch the faint scent that rises when the ink stick meets water. Earthy, sweet, almost smoky. You're surprised by how warm the inkstone feels. Maybe it absorbed heat from the air, or maybe from the scholar's hands. There's even an old rumor, half believed, half dismissed, that certain ink formulas were made to hold warmth slightly longer, giving scholars a few extra seconds where the ink flowed smoothly. Historians still debate whether those heat-retaining inks actually existed, or whether the claims were more poetic exaggeration. The way people today pretend their coffee stays hot forever, when really it's lukewarm in 10 minutes. The scholar presses his brush into the newly ground ink and begins to write. His breathing slows. The tip of the brush bends softly, then springs upward again. You feel your own breath sinking to his strokes, each line like a heartbeat, each character blooming across the page like a flower opening in slow motion. Your knees press into the warm floor, and the heat seeps up into your bones. So gentle you barely notice, until you realize your shoulders have relaxed for the first time in hours. Scholars sometimes spent entire nights exactly like this, warming their bodies and calming their minds. It almost makes you wonder how you've ever studied while half frozen in an over-air-conditioned library. If you had this heated floor, maybe you'd have finished all those assignments on time, or at least only slightly late. One scholar beside you rubs his stiff fingers, warming them between his palms. He mutters something about winter making the mind slow and the joints stubborn. His friend teases him, saying the floor is warm enough that he has no excuse. You laugh a little under your breath, surprised by how familiar their banter feels. Some things don't change. Scholars complaining about cold hands and late-night studying is practically a universal human tradition. The lamp flickers and softens. Shadows lengthen across their scrolls like dark brushstrokes painted by an invisible artist. Even though these young men are preparing for the examinations, the gwagia, the most demanding tests of the era, the atmosphere around them feels strangely serene. The ondol diffuses the sharp bite of the winter air, creating a cocoon of warmth where their thoughts can unfold without shaking hands or chattering teeth interfering. You stretch your legs slightly and notice how the heat clings to the woven mat beneath you. You wonder how long it took for people to figure out this perfect balance of stones, tunnels, and airflow that allowed warmth to spread evenly across an entire room. It's almost like the floor is a living creature breathing out comfort at its own unhurried pace. A scholar turns toward the window, peering into the quiet dark. The cold slows the mind, he murmurs, but warmth lets the thoughts loosen. He taps his brush lightly against the inkstone, sending tiny droplets scattering like stars. You can tell he believes this completely, that warmth has a sort of philosophical role, a way of helping the mind open. And when you think about your own late-night epiphanies in warm rooms, you have to admit he might be onto something. Another scholar rolls up one sleeve and presses his wrist flat against the heated floor, then sighs with theatrical relief. His classmates laugh. Someone jokes that he's going to fall asleep right there and drool on his paper. You smile again, imagining a scholar centuries ago, waking up with a perfect ink drawing smudged into the side of his face. But even through the warmth and the jokes, the stakes of their work linger in the air like a second kind of heat. Passing the exams meant prestige, influence, stability, the chance to shape society itself. Failing meant returning home in quiet disappointment. No pressure at all. The floor's warmth was more than comfort. It was a tool, a secret ally keeping their bodies from stiffening and their minds from freezing over. You listen as a tutor, older and wrapped in a thicker robe, enters the room. He nods approvingly at their work and places his hand briefly on the warm stones. He remarks that in older days, the floors weren't always this even, that the heat sometimes gathered too strongly in one corner and left the far side cold. He tells a story, perhaps exaggerated, perhaps true, of a scholar who blamed a drafty floor for his poor exam performance. Historians still debate whether uneven heating really influenced test scores, or whether that man was simply inventing excuses. Either way, the tale earns a round of quiet laughter as the night deepens. You notice how the ondol alters the room's silence. Without the crackling of a fireplace directly inside the house, the quiet becomes smoother, softer, like slipping into a sleep mask for your ears. Only the faint hum of air moving under the stones breaks the stillness. It's steady, rhythmic, almost like the breathing of someone sleeping very peacefully beside you. The scholars continue writing, grinding, warming their hands, and stretching their stiff backs. Occasionally someone mutters a proverb, or sighs dramatically, or jokes about trading his brush for a blanket. You absorb every sound, every flicker of movement, every pulse of heat beneath the floor. The night grows colder outside, but inside this room, wrapped in ondol warmth, You feel your thoughts drifting too. Maybe warmth really does make the mind clearer. Or maybe it just makes everything slower, softer, easier to bear. Either way, as you watch the scholars huddle closer to their scrolls, illuminated by that small, trembling flame, you know there's something deeply, quietly human in this scene, something unchanged across centuries. And you let yourself sink into that feeling, letting the floor support you, letting the warmth hold you steady as the ink continues to whisper across the page. You rise slightly from the warm embrace of the ondol, letting the heat linger under your calves. As you follow the young scholar making his careful way through the narrow corridors of the Joseon house, his movements are measured, deliberate, almost ritualistic, as if the very floor beneath him is a guide, urging each step to be precise. The faint aroma of embers mingles with the scent of polished wood and old paper, curling into the soft air around him. You notice how the scholar pauses before each doorway, one hand brushing against the frame, the other lightly pressing his palm to the floor, drawing a little extra comfort from the heat that seems to rise in waves beneath his feet. In today's world, you think you'd probably be fumbling for a heating pad or a cup of coffee to survive a study session like this. But here, centuries ago, the floor itself is an invisible companion, warming bones and steadying the mind in a way no mug of modern caffeine could hope to replicate. The scholar approaches his study room, where the layers of paper and ink await him like an inviting puzzle. You watch as he crouches by the low wooden desk, settling himself onto the floor, the warmth seeping into the thin cloth of his robe. His fingers stretch and flex, absorbing the heat. And you imagine how a cold body would stiffen instantly. Breaking concentration, a small lamp sits beside the desk, its flame steady yet delicate, a tiny universe of light illuminating characters painstakingly written on mulberry paper. He reaches for his inkstone and begins the familiar ritual of grinding ink, the quiet circular motion echoing softly in the room. Each rotation, a whisper. Each pause, a measured inhalation. It's not just preparation, it's meditation. You follow his thoughts silently, imagining the pressure resting upon his shoulders. The upcoming examination, the Gwagyo, is no ordinary test. It is a gateway, a chance to climb into the higher echelons of scholarly society, a ticket to influence and social recognition. In these quiet hours, the scholar's mind is a careful balancing act, the warmth of the floor soothing his physical tension, while his thoughts trace intricate patterns of philosophy, law, and poetry, weaving them together in the hope that they might stand unbroken when examined. There's something almost magical about the way the floor supports him, not merely as a physical warmth, but as a companion to his intellect, a foundation for clarity. You notice the scholar occasionally glancing toward the doorway, checking for interruptions, yet there is a sense of tranquility. He seems to trust the warmth beneath him, as if the ondol itself were a mentor, nudging his mind along the edges of insight. And then he begins to recite quietly, soft syllables floating into the room, words rolling over one another, phrases curling with the rhythm of centuries-old traditions. This ritual of recitation, paired with the heat below, appears to sharpen his thought, a delicate balance of sensory and intellectual engagement. Historians still debate how much of this focused state was truly influenced by the floor versus sheer discipline, but you can't help but notice that the scholar's fingers flex and relax with a steadiness that seems intimately tied to the warmth rising from the stones. A sudden chill drifts through the thin cracks in the window pane, and you shiver slightly, grateful for the ondol beneath your feet. The scholar rubs his hands together and slides them back onto the floor, pressing the heat back into his palms. It's almost like a secret ritual, a silent conversation between man and stone. You imagine him later telling a friend about this practice, how warmth underfoot was more than comfort. It was essential for thought, for memory, for endurance. Oddly enough, a similar effect is sought today with ergonomic chairs and heated blankets. Yet nothing quite matches the simplicity of heat that flows naturally through the floor. Enveloping the body without demanding conscious effort, he spreads his paper carefully across the desk, each sheet fluttering slightly as he arranges them by topic. The movements are deliberate but relaxed, a choreography born of countless nights like this. Your eyes catch the intricate brushstrokes of calligraphy, the way the ink absorbs light and warmth simultaneously, a subtle glow reflecting the fire's path through the ondol system. Some of the ink seems to glisten faintly. An old anecdote mentions a type of ink that would hold heat slightly longer, keeping the brush supple in winter's chill. You smile, imagining the scholar pausing to check whether his ink feels cozy enough, an almost absurd notion, but one that perfectly encapsulates the intertwined worlds of practicality and care in this study ritual. The young scholar lifts his brush and begins to write, carefully forming characters, each one a study in precision and thought. He pauses occasionally to press his fingers back onto the warm floor, letting the heat spread through his body, loosening stiff joints and steadying the brush. You notice how the room itself feels alive with warmth and concentration, a soft glow not just from the lamp, but from the human energy concentrated in the act of creation. Even the faint hiss of the floor's heating tunnels becomes part of the rhythm, a background hum akin to soft music, calming and grounding. You think of modern students struggling under fluorescent lights and hard chairs, and can't help but chuckle quietly. perhaps, we've traded the elegance of ondol for the convenience of radiators and heating vents. But something vital is missing: the intimacy between warmth, body, and mind. Outside, the wind whistles softly against the roof tiles, sending occasional shivers through the thin walls. Inside, however, the scholar seems untouched by it, his focus unwavering. You notice how the warmth encourages him to move more freely, to shift from kneeling to sitting cross-legged, to lean forward and back without hesitation. In the absence of cold, thought itself seems more fluid, more willing to bend and stretch around the obstacles of complex reasoning. Historians still debate whether these heating practices truly enhanced intellectual capacity or if the benefits were psychological. Yet observing the scholar now, you sense an undeniable synergy between body, mind, and environment. A harmony almost impossible to manufacture artificially. The scholar's breathing deepens as the night progresses, a steady, measured rhythm in sync with the quiet flicker of his lamp. Occasionally, he mutters a line of poetry or a quote from Confucian classics, letting the words settle into the room's warmth. You watch his hand move confidently across the paper, ink flowing with surprising grace given the late hour. Sometimes his brush lifts to pause, then returns, each motion slow, deliberate, almost ceremonial. You imagine the countless students who have performed the same gestures, kneeling on similar floors, drawing strength from the same source of quiet heat. A small cough echoes in the corner. A friend? Perhaps, adjusting their position. The scholar smiles faintly but does not break rhythm, and you notice how even minor interruptions seem absorbed by the room's stillness. The ondol's heat appears to buffer not just physical chill, but distraction itself, as if the warmth shields focus as effectively as it shields limbs from cold. A gentle thought passes through your mind. Maybe this is why these rooms were so meticulously constructed, why engineers labored over tunnels and slopes, not just for comfort, but for the cultivation of clear, disciplined thought. The scholar pauses finally, setting the brush aside to rub his eyes, a faint smile playing across his lips. He leans back slightly, letting the floor cradle him, his fingers tracing the heat beneath him. He seems to take a quiet satisfaction in the process itself, independent of results, which is perhaps the most human aspect of all, a simple embrace of warmth, focus, and the tactile joy of creation. You realize that the night is quietly passing, the scholar's thoughts carrying on in rhythm with the ondol's steady pulse beneath the floor. You take a moment to absorb the scene fully, the warmth wrapping gently around bodies, the lamp casting soft shadows on ancient scrolls, the ink glinting subtly as it dries, and the scholars moving in harmony with the floor's heat. This is a space designed not only for survival against winter's chill, but for fostering thought, reflection, and learning, a small ecosystem where comfort and intellect coexist seamlessly. As you watch, you feel the warmth yourself, a subtle ease spreading through your legs and spine, and you understand why these floors were cherished so dearly. It's not just heat, not just comfort. It is a medium for patience, for focus, for quiet persistence, an invisible companion guiding every careful stroke of the brush, every slow, deliberate step of thought. And so, you linger here, feeling the heat hum beneath you, letting it wrap around both body and mind, knowing that this night, like countless nights before it, carries the promise of clarity, endurance, and that gentle, almost imperceptible rhythm that only warmth beneath the feet can offer. You take a gentle step from the scholar's study, the lingering warmth of the ondol beneath your feet still clinging to your calves as you move through the quiet corridors of the house. Each footfall is cushioned, almost floating, on the heated stone, and you can't help but marvel at the sophistication hidden beneath what seems like a simple floor. You peer closer, noticing the subtle undulations in the surface, the way the planks and stones have been arranged to channel heat efficiently across the room. The architects of Joseon Korea didn't just lay floors, they crafted a living system, a warm artery running beneath every chamber, carrying not just heat but a sense of focus and comfort to all who walked above it. Today, you'd probably settle for radiant floor panels or a forced air vent. But here, centuries ago, ingenuity had married material and element in a way that feels almost like magic. As you crouch to examine the floor, you notice the layers beneath. Smooth stones set carefully into mortar, fine soil compacted to create insulation, and tunnels designed to channel smoke from a distant fire under the room. Each layer has a purpose, each stone a place, and you sense the meticulous planning that went into creating a surface that could breathe, subtly shifting warmth while preventing cold drafts. The system is not uniform. The floor has a gentle slope, imperceptible at first, designed to guide heat through the channels efficiently. Few visitors ever realize the elegance of this design, yet it is this hidden slope that ensures the warmth rises evenly, that every knee and calf above feels the tender embrace of fire transformed into floor. Scholars, and even kings, would have appreciated such an invisible elegance, though it might have seemed almost mundane to the untrained eye. You trace your hand along the edge of a stone, feeling the residual warmth, and imagine the engineers who first conceived of this system. They must have watched smoke and embers dance, observed patterns of heat rising from open hearths, And then imagine how this warmth could travel under walls and floors without intrusion, without requiring a constant vigil. Their knowledge of materials, which stones retained heat, which soil allowed airflow without allowing ash to seep through, seems astonishingly advanced. Some historians still debate exactly how much trial and error was involved versus sheer calculation. But standing here, feeling the gentle pulse beneath your fingertips, you understand that practicality and art were intertwined in every inch of construction. As your eyes follow the faint lines of the tunnel beneath the floor, a strange detail catches your attention. Small vents, discreetly placed along the edges of the room. These weren't obvious. They weren't merely functional, they were subtle instruments of comfort and control, allowing warmth to escape slowly and evenly, preventing hot spots while ensuring the floor never became uncomfortably intense. You smile at the thought that a visitor centuries later might feel the heat and assume it was natural, organic, even divine. Unaware of the deliberate craftsmanship hidden beneath the plaster and stone, the engineers, it seems, had anticipated human sensitivity to warmth, much as a modern designer anticipates ergonomic comfort. Except here, the tool was elemental: stone, soil, and fire. You move further along, tracing the path where smoke would have once curled underfoot. In certain rooms, you notice, the channels are broader, the stones heavier, the tunnels slightly raised, a quiet sophistication designed for both function and longevity. Some of these floors, as old accounts whisper, could continue to deliver warmth decades after their initial construction if maintained carefully. And yet, in rare instances, a floor would fail. A stone would crack or shift, forcing the inhabitants to improvise. A tale lingers about one scholar who, on the eve of an important exam, found his study floor partially collapsed due to a misaligned stone, and he reportedly sat on blankets and furs above the gap, trying to coax his mind into calm focus despite the chill and the fear of structural failure. Historians still debate whether this event truly happened or if it was embellished as a cautionary anecdote about over-reliance on technology. Yet the story speaks to how central the ondol was to scholarly life. You pause to consider the materials again. The stone, smooth yet firm. The soil, dark and compacted. And the brick or clay lining the tunnels, designed to resist heat decay. You imagine the artisans who quarried the stone, mixed the mortar, and measured the subtle slopes, working with precision without modern tools. You wonder how they understood airflow, smoke, behavior, and heat retention well enough to create floors that could not only warm bodies, but sustain concentration and thought. Some accounts even hint at experimental methods, such as using different types of charcoal or firewood in the channels to control the intensity of heat. You can almost see the scholars arguing over which type of wood burned longest or produced the most stable warmth. Some preferring oak for its endurance, others pine for the faster heat. The debates would have been lively, perhaps over tea or quietly in corridors, but the end result remained a floor that breathed, that worked alongside the mind and body, silently supporting intellect. You crouch once more, letting your fingers linger on the stone as you imagine a scholar pacing above the floor, transferring heat to his feet and shins, loosening the tension in his legs and allowing a freer circulation of blood and thought. It is a sensation almost meditative, you realize. The way warmth rises and spreads without notice, allowing the mind to focus on questions of philosophy, law, or poetry rather than shivering in discomfort. A small humorous thought occurs. In today's world, you might be sitting in a heated gaming chair, complaining about lumbar support, while centuries ago, someone would kneel on a floor that naturally adjusted its warmth, subtly guiding posture and comfort. The sophistication of simplicity becomes almost poetic when observed in practice. And there is something else. The floors themselves seem to respond to the rhythm of life above. When a scholar shifted his weight, the heat would redistribute. When a group gathered for discussion, the warmth flowed outward, enveloping the room. Some engineers even designed floors to prioritize central rooms for maximum warmth during winter nights, subtly directing heat to the areas most in need. Rarely mentioned, but noted in some records, is the fact that in larger houses, different tunnels could be lit separately, offering zones of temperature: cooler near sleeping quarters, warmer near study rooms, an ancient method of environmental control that rivals modern HVAC zoning. Scholars still debate the precise mechanics of how the airflows and temperature gradients were balanced, but it is clear that whoever designed these systems had a profound understanding of both physics and human comfort. As you stand, the warmth of the floor embracing your feet like a gentle hand, you notice the faint hum beneath you, the soft and imperceptible echo of air and heat circulating through tunnels. It's not a sound one would write in a poem, yet it has a rhythm, a subtle heartbeat that synchronizes with slow breathing, quiet footsteps, and thoughtful pauses. You imagine the scholars moving through the house, their minds flowing with ideas, the floor guiding them almost invisibly, reminding them of their place in the space and the season, providing steady, unwavering comfort through long nights of study. And sometimes, you suspect, they might have whispered to the floor, half joking, half reverent, thanking it for its quiet service. You take a final step across the room, feeling the gradient of warmth shift subtly under your toes as the floor's slope channels the heat toward the center. You imagine how night after night, this subtle engineering allowed minds to sharpen, thoughts to linger longer, and scholarly work to continue uninterrupted by the cold. Even now, centuries later, you can feel the echo of that careful design, a quiet testament to the ingenuity and patience of builders who understood that intellect thrives not in discomfort, but in harmony with environment. And so, you pause at the threshold, looking down at the stone and soil, breathing in the faint aroma of embers long extinguished, feeling the gentle pulse of a floor that truly breathes. You realize that what seems simple, a warm floor, is actually a collaboration of engineering, psychology, and tradition. It is a foundation, quite literally, for thought itself. And as you step away, you carry a sense of reverence for the invisible mechanisms that have cradled human inquiry, allowing warm minds to wander freely, unshackled by winter's chill. You breathe in the crisp winter air outside, your boots crunching lightly against the frosted ground, and follow the faint wisp of smoke curling from a nearby home. It drifts lazily, almost teasingly, like a quiet invitation into a world where warmth is both a necessity and a subtle art. As you step inside, the aroma of firewood, mingled with the earthy scent of heated stone, greets you like an old friend. The room is dimly lit, shadows flickering on walls as if the light itself were dancing to the rhythm of the fire below. You notice the scholar hunched over a scroll, his sleeves rolled back to avoid the heat, fingers tracing lines of text. And you realize that this warmth isn't just comfort, it's the silent companion of thought. The invisible hand, cradling curiosity and focus, smoke-hazed nights, you realize, are more than an atmospheric flourish. They are a sensory immersion that the Joseon scholars relied upon. As the firewood crackles beneath the floor, you can almost feel the subtle vibration of heat rising through the layered stones and soil, moving through the tunnels with a deliberate, patient cadence. The smell of burning pine, cedar, or oak doesn't just warm the body, it soothes the mind. In one obscure record, a type of wood was once banned from burning in certain royal studies because it emitted a fragrant smoke, thought to distract the scholars from their work, leaving them either lethargic or inspired beyond control. The ban seems almost whimsical today, yet it underscores a meticulous concern for the environment's impact on mental performance. You chuckle softly, imagining a modern office trying to ban certain scented candles because someone's spreadsheet focus might be compromised. Same principle, different century. You watch the small embers smolder underfoot and wonder at the rhythm of study they enabled. Scholars would spread out their manuscripts on the floor, grinding stones carefully, and allow the gentle heat to seep into their bones, loosening the stiffness that comes with hours of kneeling or sitting cross-legged. You notice how the rising warmth seems to guide posture, encourage a steady breathing pattern, and invite prolonged concentration. The floor, in essence, becomes an extension of the scholar's own body, warming joints and muscles that might otherwise protest under the weight of contemplation. Some historians still debate how central the ondol's warmth really was to academic success. Yet standing here, you feel its presence palpably, like a silent mentor urging thought to flow more freely. The smoke itself is a character in the night. You follow its lazy tendrils across the ceiling, tracing the hidden channels that led it from distant fire pits into a labyrinth beneath the floor. Each tunnel was designed not only to transfer heat but also to ensure that smoke never intruded into living spaces. A feat of engineering that seems almost invisible, yet critical. You imagine the young apprentices learning the trade of fire management, monitoring temperatures, and adjusting the fuel load to maintain an even heat. Their hands, coated in soot and fine ash, moved with practiced grace, a quiet ballet of maintenance that few outside the household would notice. Some texts hint that certain apprentices would even whisper to the fire, as if acknowledging the living rhythm of the warmth beneath them. An oddly intimate ritual blending science with superstition. As the night deepens, you sense the connection between human rhythm and architectural ingenuity. The warmth rises like a gentle tide, enveloping feet and calves, moving up legs and into the body's core, subtly easing the tension of cold joints. You recall a curious anecdote. A visiting envoy from a distant province once complained that the room felt almost too warm, likening it to a sauna, which led to polite but amused discussions among the household about the proper intensity of an ondol. The story survives in fragments, often retold with a chuckle, a reminder that warmth, much like scholarship, is a matter of balance. Too little and minds grow numb. Too much and focus dissipates under discomfort. You shift your weight, feeling the floor respond underfoot, and wonder how many generations of engineers refined this equilibrium, negotiating between fire, stone, and human comfort. The smell of smoke carries with it unexpected history. You learn that certain types of wood, prized for their long-lasting heat and clean burn, were sometimes forbidden in scholarly homes. Apparently, the smoke could interfere with delicate inks, or even affect the scholar's respiratory endurance. Subtle but significant details in the pursuit of intellectual rigor. Standing here, toes warmed by stone channels, you imagine the tiny debates that would have flared over the selection of firewood. Pine versus oak, birch versus chestnut, each with its own scent, burn rate, an effect on both the floor's temperature and the scholar's focus. It feels almost modern. This preoccupation with environmental variables affecting productivity, only the tools and materials are centuries old. The stakes an examination in the royal court rather than a quarterly report. You kneel to inspect the floor again, noticing the faint blackened traces where smoke once passed, the subtle discoloration of stones that had been exposed to heat for decades. The channels themselves are precise, with small variations in height and width to control the flow of air and embers. Engineers' records suggest may have experimented with angles, stone types, and tunnel widths to achieve the most efficient heat transfer. A miscalculation could leave one corner of a room too chilly or another uncomfortably hot, and some accounts suggest that families would adjust their floors over time, replacing stones, shimming tunnels, and even altering the soil to correct these anomalies. Scholars still debate the degree of trial and error versus advanced planning, but there is little doubt that the result was a floor capable of sustaining warmth through long winters, nurturing minds in the process. The scent of the fire mixes with the musky odor of paper and ink, forming a layered sensory experience that seems to slow time. You watch as a scholar gently fans an inkstone, sending a plume of soot into the air that drifts upward, mingling with the smoke from beneath the floor. Every movement is deliberate, meditative, almost ritualistic, grinding ink, turning pages, adjusting posture, and letting the floor carry warmth into every joint. You imagine the quiet joy of learning here, the comfort of heat as an unseen teacher guiding both body and mind. It feels entirely different from the chill of modern air-conditioned rooms, where you often have to remind yourself to move, stretch, or adjust the thermostat, never quite achieving that perfect balance of physical ease and mental alertness. A story lingers in your mind, about a scholar whose prized manuscripts were nearly ruined one winter when a rare type of banned wood was burned in a neighboring house, sending aromatic smoke into his study. Some historians argue the tale is apocryphal, others maintain it reflects the meticulous attention to environmental control in scholarly households. Either way, it reminds you that warmth and air quality were not just luxuries, they were integral to intellectual pursuit. Standing here, you feel the ghost of those debates, the echoes of careful observation, the ancient negotiation between comfort, fire, and the mind's need for focus. You rise slowly, allowing the warmth of the floor to fade gradually into the cooler air near the walls, sensing how the floor's slope directs heat, guiding your steps toward the next chamber. The ondol's elegance is not just technical, but profoundly psychological. It soothes, it stabilizes, and it inspires. You notice how easily your thoughts drift, lightly tethered by the soft, pervasive warmth. And you understand why these scholars, leaning over scrolls and inkstones, produced work of lasting influence. Some historians still debate whether the environment alone could account for the cognitive clarity achieved here, but your body and mind, gently carried by heat, feel the answer intuitively. Finally, you pause near the doorway, inhaling deeply the mingled aromas of wood, ash, and soil. You imagine the countless nights scholars spent here, moving between rooms, each footstep guided by gentle warmth, each breath filled with smoky comfort. There is a rhythm, an intimacy, a subtle orchestration of environment and intellect that feels almost sacred. You step forward carefully, leaving behind the smoke-hazed night, carrying with you the memory of warmth, focus, and the whispered secrets of a floor that quietly cradled minds and hearts alike. You step onto the winding road that climbs slowly through the mountains, the chill of the evening air pressing against your cheeks, and hear the faint murmur of conversation carried by the wind. Nestled along this path is an old hosan, its smoke curling into the sky like a silent signal to weary travelers. Warmth awaits within. As you push open the creaking wooden door, the scent of pine logs, smoldering coal, and the earthy temps of heated stones immediately wraps around you. The floor radiates a soft, welcoming heat, and you can almost feel it seep into your bones. A gentle counterpoint to the crisp mountain air just outside. Travelers sit cross-legged, sharing quiet laughter over bowls of hot tea, their faces flushed from the gentle heat beneath them. You notice a small plaque near the hearth, bearing the legend of a room that never cools down, a curious story that seems almost too whimsical to be real. Yet the warmth beneath your feet whispers otherwise. The inn itself is a masterclass in the application of ondol, the Korean underfloor heating system you've been tracing for nights. Stones and soil have been layered meticulously, channels of air carved with the care of a sculptor, all to ensure that the fire's heat spreads evenly and persists long after the embers have died down. You watch the innkeeper feed a modest fire at the back, and the warmth seems to flow magically through the floor, arriving in every room without a wisp of smoke escaping into the living spaces. It's a quiet miracle, and you can't help but think how foreign it would feel to someone used to modern radiators or underfloor heating systems controlled with a thermostat. Here, the heat is alive, tactile, intimately tied to the rhythm of wood, stone, and time itself. Some historians still debate the precise methods used to maintain such consistency, but you can feel the ingenuity under your feet. You follow a narrow corridor lined with low wooden posts, each step warming your ankles and calves, and reach the legendary room that, according to tales, never cools down. The moment you step inside, the difference is striking. The air is gentle but insistent in its warmth, a soft embrace that leaves your skin tingling in quiet delight. Guests claim that even in the bitterest winter storms, when the wind rattles, shudders, and snow presses against the mountainside, this room remains a cozy sanctuary. You slide your fingers across the smooth wooden floor, marveling at the subtle undulations that direct heat perfectly across the room. It's not only the engineering that captivates you, but also the philosophy behind it. Warmth is not merely comfort. It is preservation, focus, and hospitality combined. You smile softly, imagining how a foreign traveler in centuries past would have marveled. Toes warm, spirits lifted, perhaps even penning letters home about this magical corner of Korea. The legend carries with it oddities that few notice at first. You learn that the room's enduring warmth is partly due to a slight gradient in the floor, designed to optimize airflow from the main hearth to every corner. Air moves silently beneath the stones, carrying heat efficiently and subtly, so no single spot overheats, while no other feels neglected. Engineers of the past understood this intuitively, blending science and craftsmanship without needing modern tools. Some accounts even suggest that the innkeeper would add small amounts of aromatic wood to the embers on certain nights, a practice meant to improve both the fragrance and the quality of heat. A ritual that might seem eccentric today, but clearly delighted guests who could feel the warmth linger long after leaving. Scholars still debate how widespread these practices were, but standing in this room, the effect is undeniable. A quiet triumph of design and care. As you settle onto the floor, knees tucked gently beneath you, the warmth penetrates, slowly loosening tension from your muscles. You notice the faint crackle of embers beneath the hearth, their rhythm steady and reassuring. Around you, other travelers arrange their belongings, some curling into blankets, others stretching lightly, all drawn to the comforting embrace of the heated floor. It's a communal intimacy you don't often see in modern inns or hotels, where central heating often feels impersonal, regulated by buttons or switches. Here, the heat has character. It responds, encourages, and lulls its inhabitants into a subtle sense of harmony. A soft smile crosses your lips as you watch a child roll onto the warm stones, giggling quietly as the heat nudges her little toes awake with delight. A playful reminder that comfort, thought, and warmth have always been intertwined. Stories linger in the smoke-hazed corners, whispered from generation to generation. One tale tells of a scholar who journeyed to this inn during a particularly harsh winter, seeking refuge not just for his body but for his studies. He spent nights kneeling on the floor, inkstone and brush in hand, the heat so gentle yet persistent that his fingers never stiffened and his focus never faltered. According to legend, the same scholar completed a treatise during his stay that later influenced state policy. Some historians question the veracity of these accounts, but the story endures, suggesting a belief that the warmth of the floor could nurture not only bodies but ideas. You imagine your own hand tracing the strokes of ink, encouraged by the subtle caress of heat, and you understand why these tales carry weight across centuries. The innkeeper, moving quietly between rooms, demonstrates a humility that mirrors the quiet brilliance of the architecture. Each action is measured, deliberate, and reflective, feeding fires just enough to maintain consistent heat, removing ashes with gentle care so that smoke remains confined to its channels. You watch him pause, adjusting a stone that has shifted slightly, and a shiver of appreciation runs through you. The interplay between human attentiveness and structural ingenuity is subtle, yet profound. A small group of scholars once debated the optimal design for ondol systems in inns versus homes, with disagreements that persisted for generations. Some argued that inns required larger hearths and broader channels to accommodate transient guests, while others believed that careful tuning of smaller private systems sufficed. Observing this room, the balance seems perfected, yet you can't help but smile at the echoes of past debates, still invisible but present beneath the warm surface. The smell of smoke is layered and complex here, a mixture of pine, birch, and lingering hints of charcoal that combine into a fragrance at once familiar and exotic. It reminds you of walking past a bakery on a cool morning, but instead of bread, it's warmth itself that is baked into every stone. As your senses adjust, you perceive faint differences between corners, the subtle gradients that indicate the flow of air beneath the floor. You can almost see it, like a river of heat moving silently beneath the surface, touching each guest with a gentle insistence. A scholar visiting decades ago reportedly carried small samples of stones and ash back to his hometown to replicate the effect. Though results were mixed, historians still debate how successful such endeavors truly were, but the tale underscores the ingenuity and dedication that shaped this simple yet extraordinary feature of daily life. You allow your thoughts to drift, encouraged by the slow, steady heat. Outside, the wind moans through the mountain passes, rattling shutters and stirring snowdrifts. Yet inside, the room remains steadfastly warm. Travelers share quiet conversation, their words melting into the smoky air, forming a gentle chorus that accompanies the crackle of embers. You think of the countless footsteps that have traced this floor, of scholars who once knelt here poring over texts, and of families who found shelter and warmth in its embrace. Even today, the experience is both tactile and psychological, a small reminder that architecture can nurture both mind and body, and that a floor, thoughtfully constructed, can be as alive as the people it serves. Finally, you rise, feeling the gentle resistance of the warm floor beneath your feet, each step a reminder of the care embedded in every stone and soil layer. You pass the hearth once more, inhaling deeply the scent of firewood, and imagine the countless nights scholars and travelers have spent here, guided by warmth and quiet contemplation. The legend of the never-cooling room is not merely a tale, it's a testament to the quiet, persistent ingenuity that allowed heat to carry through centuries, shaping bodies, minds, and stories alike. You pause at the doorway, taking one last look at the soft glow and the faint smoke-hazed silhouettes of those who have rested here, carrying away a sense of serenity, comfort, and the timeless rhythm of fire beneath stone. You find yourself in a quiet chamber, the walls lined with scrolls and books that seem almost to hum with the weight of accumulated knowledge. The room is modest but suffused with the gentle heat rising from the ondol floor, a comfort so natural it almost feels like the stones themselves are sighing in relief at your arrival. You watch a scholar, sleeves rolled up, kneeling on a thin mat, carefully preparing his ink. The scent of pine smoke lingers faintly, a soft backdrop to the tactile rhythm of his hands, grinding the solid ink stick against a stone ink slab. Each turn of the wrist, each circular motion, produces a deep, rich black that promises the precision and elegance of centuries of Korean calligraphy. You notice that the heat from the floor seems to wrap around his fingers, keeping them supple and nimble, a delicate bridge between body and craft that modern writers, hunched over plastic keyboards and over air-conditioned offices, might only dream of. He pauses for a moment, fingers resting lightly on the warm stone beneath him, and you feel almost transported. You notice a subtle variation in the warmth across the floor, as if certain sections have been tuned intentionally to cradle specific areas of the body, and you can't help but marvel at this harmony between human need and architectural ingenuity. It reminds you of modern ergonomic furniture, but far more alive, a system that seems to respond intuitively to its occupant. As he resumes grinding, you sense a meditative rhythm taking hold, the small sounds of ink scraping against stone, the quiet crackle of embers feeding the floor below, and the faint creak of wooden beams overhead. Each element combines to form a symphony of focus and calm, and you can almost hear the whispers of centuries of scholars who have knelt here before, seeking clarity, understanding, and the perfect stroke of ink. What fascinates you most is a little-known aspect of the ink itself. Unlike typical ink that can become stiff or brittle in cold conditions, the scholar uses a special formulation that retains subtle warmth even after being ground. The slight heat helps the brush glide smoothly over paper, maintaining consistency and precision in every stroke. It's a detail most people overlook, but it underscores how every component of study in this era, from the floor to the ink, was thoughtfully considered to support scholarly labor. Some historians still debate whether this was a widespread practice or a rare innovation reserved for elite scholars. But standing here, watching the delicate transformation of solid ink into liquid artistry, it feels like a quiet testament to human ingenuity. Your attention drifts to the scholar's hands as they lift the brush, dipping it into the warm, glossy ink. Each stroke across the parchment is deliberate, controlled, and yet alive with subtle energy, as though the warmth from the floor and the careful grinding of ink converge to inspire movement and thought simultaneously. It reminds you, playfully, of the modern struggle with stiff fingers when typing on cold laptops. Here, there is no struggle, only a fluidity of motion that is as meditative as it is productive. You note that while the scholar's body is rooted in tradition, his methods carry a sophistication that borders on alchemy, the interplay of heat, ink, and human attention yielding a quiet magic. And as you watch, a small smile tugs at your lips because even centuries later, the simple pleasure of warm hands over smooth ink is instantly relatable. Bridging worlds and generations, the room itself seems to participate in this ritual. The placement of stones beneath the floor, carefully leveled and spaced, ensures that heat rises evenly without creating hot spots that might scorch paper or leave some fingers numb. Channels carved beneath the floor guide smoke and warmth like a hidden orchestra, and the slight slope of the floor, almost imperceptible, helps direct airflow in ways you wouldn't notice without careful observation. Engineers in the Joseon era apparently understood principles of thermodynamics intuitively, though some modern scholars still debate the exact techniques employed to achieve such even heating. The fact that these methods persisted, refined over generations, suggests a deep appreciation for comfort, utility, and perhaps even aesthetics. After all, a scholar at ease on a perfectly warmed floor produces more elegant calligraphy than one shivering over cold stone. The scholar pauses again to blot a fresh page, his eyes squinting slightly under the soft lantern light. You notice how his posture and breathing harmonize with the gentle heat beneath him, each inhalation and exhalation guided by the rhythmic reassurance of warmth. There's a certain intimacy to this space, the feeling that heat itself participates in the act of creation. Even the aroma of pine wood, mingling with the ink's faint smokiness, seems designed to soothe the mind and sharpen focus simultaneously. You recall tales of writers in colder climates, hunched over frozen surfaces, quills stiff in their grasp, and you understand why the ondol was considered essential not just for comfort but for cultivating the mind. Some accounts suggest that entire academic treatises were completed in such environments, and while the precise details remain debated, the consistent reports of warm floors enhancing concentration seem beyond dispute. A subtle quirk of the room catches your eye, a small, hidden niche beneath a low beam, where an extra block of heated stone can be added for nights when the winter chill is particularly fierce. The scholar occasionally taps it with the heel of his hand, checking the warmth, a quiet ritual that ensures no corner of his workspace feels neglected. You can't help but chuckle softly at the thought that even centuries ago, people were managing microclimates in their study areas, long before central heating systems and smart thermostats. It's a playful reminder that human comfort has always been a blend of necessity and cleverness, and that innovation often arises from observing small needs and responding to them with subtlety and care. Historians still argue whether such niches were standard practice or unique to elite academies, but their impact on the user is undeniable. Warmth, like ink, must be consistent to foster the best work. As the night deepens, the scholar leans back, allowing the warmth to sink into his joints. Each inhalation carrying a hint of smoke and earth, each exhalation blending with the soft hush of the room. The ink, now fully liquefied and ready, mirrors the smoothness of the heated floor beneath him. You feel a quiet kinship with him, even across centuries. As if the simple act of tending to ink and heat connects your rhythm to his. There's a subtle pleasure in realizing that some elements of human experience, focus, warmth, and the tactile engagement of creating something lasting remain unchanged. You let your mind wander, imagining the countless scholars who have followed this same ritual, their thoughts crystallizing in ink while the floor worked silently to cradle their bodies. A foundation both literal and metaphorical. The room's atmosphere is further enriched by the low hum of conversation beyond the scholar's immediate space. Other guests murmuring quietly as they adjust their mats, share tips on travel, or discuss the merits of certain inks. The heat from the floor spreads outward, reaching them in soft waves, uniting all in the subtle comfort that only well-engineered ondol can provide. You notice the interplay of shadows and lights, the flicker of lantern flames casting gentle patterns across the walls, and you feel an almost dreamlike serenity. Some stories claim that the ambience of such rooms directly inspired poetry, and while historians still debate the extent to which warmth influenced literary output, standing here, you feel the plausibility. Creativity often flourishes in spaces where body and mind are simultaneously nurtured. Finally, the scholar carefully lifts a finished piece of calligraphy, placing it to dry near the warm stones where it will remain supple and resilient, a subtle touch that ensures longevity. You sense the satisfaction in this act, an appreciation for both the material and the immaterial, the ink, the warmth, the focused mind. Stepping back, you let your fingers brush against the floor one last time, feeling its gentle pulse beneath you, a reminder that comfort and craftsmanship are inseparable in this world. The room holds you in its quiet embrace, and you carry with you the soft hum of heat, the scratch of ink, and the centuries of care invested in each small element of this scholarly haven. You find yourself stepping out into a pale, biting winter morning, the air crisp enough to make your cheeks tingle, and your breath form tiny clouds that vanish almost instantly into the stillness. The scholar you've been following kneels at the edge of the courtyard, the frozen earth crunching softly beneath his straw shoes, and you can't help but notice the sharp contrast between the cold outdoors and the sanctuary of warmth waiting beneath the floors inside. He pauses for a moment, adjusting the layers of his hanbok and tugging at the scarf wrapped around his neck, the steam of his breath rising and curling like miniature dragons in the pale sunlight. You shiver instinctively, imagining the biting wind sneaking past door frames and window slats. And then remember how the ondol system below the floors is about to become the invisible hero of the day. The very thought of returning to that warm, stone-cradled comfort is tantalizing. Almost like imagining slipping into a heated car seat after trudging through a modern blizzard. You smile softly at the parallel. Centuries later, people would still seek heated surfaces to stave off winter misery. Yet here, centuries ago, the scholars already knew the wisdom of warmth. Today, the scholar is preparing for one of the most significant events of his life, the state examination, or guagyo, held in a chilly government hall, far from the comforts of home. You follow him silently along the snow-dusted path, noting how he treads carefully, mindful of his robes, the precious papers tucked under his arm, and the thoughtfulness with which he approaches every step. The walls of the examination hall loom ahead, austere and imposing, the kind of architecture that demands respect even before one considers the mental rigor required to succeed inside. You can almost hear the echo of boots on stone, the faint murmur of candidates gathered and waiting, their breaths puffing out into the freezing air, their nervous hands trembling despite thick gloves and layered sleeves. You lean slightly closer, imagining the damp chill that seeps into the bones of those who arrive too early, the kind of cold that seems to slow thought, making even simple recollections fuzzy. This is exactly why the ondol floor at home had been so crucial. The scholar had trained his body to be used to thinking in warmth, and that memory of comfort, like a mental anchor, will help him endure the day. As the morning sun climbs higher, you watch the candidates filing into the examination hall, the echo of their footsteps resonating through the wooden beams and stone floors. Inside, the air is a mix of smoke from nearby brazier fires and the lingering chill that sneaks through the gaps in the old structure. You notice that the stone floor has been heated in advance, a subtle but vital detail, for a scholar's endurance depends on more than just mental preparation. As he kneels, arranging his papers and inkstones on the cold surface, you observe how he subtly shifts to maximize contact with the warmth radiating from beneath, as if seeking the comfort that will steady his hands and sharpen his mind. Historians still debate whether the ondol in examination halls was a standard feature or a privilege of certain regions. But standing here, feeling the faint heat underfoot, you understand its practical impact. Even the slightest warmth can mean the difference between a foggy mind and a clear, focused one. The examination begins, and you watch the scholar's pencil glide over the paper, the ink flowing with steady precision. Outside, the wind howls against the wooden shutters, rattling them faintly, but inside, the warmth from the stone beneath him creates a cocoon that preserves concentration. You notice how he occasionally presses a hand against the floor, closing his eyes for a fraction of a second, almost as if drawing energy from the heat itself, letting it seep through his bones and steady his pulse. A faint smile plays on your lips because the image is unexpectedly intimate. Centuries ago, these scholars understood that comfort was intertwined with intellect. Modern students might drink energy drinks or adjust their office thermostats. But here, the floor itself is a silent partner in intellectual labor, an ever-present tactile aid that whispers reassurance into tense muscles and racing minds. There's an anecdote that surfaces in your mind, one of those strange, little-known historical tidbits that seems too specific to be true, yet historians continue to discuss it. During one particularly harsh winter, a scholar was said to have written his entire examination without leaving his mat, despite the wind whipping through cracks in the building, because the ondol beneath him kept his legs and lower body warm enough to sustain long hours of sitting and writing. The account is contested. Some say it's exaggerated, perhaps an early attempt at glorifying dedication, but it illustrates the profound impact of well-managed warmth on scholarly endurance. Standing here, observing your scholar's deliberate movements, you understand why such tales endure. Heat is more than comfort. It is a facilitator of thought, a bridge between body and mind, a subtle ally that allows endurance in the face of adversity. The hall is quiet, save for the faint scratching of brushes and occasional coughs. You notice how other candidates occasionally glance down at the floor, shivering slightly, adjusting their posture to catch a sliver of warmth where they can. The scholar you've been following doesn't flinch. He seems almost perfectly attuned to the floor beneath him. You imagine the hours of preparation that led to this moment, the practice on heated floors at home, the cultivation of patience and focus, and the small, perhaps almost imperceptible, advantages that gave him the edge. It's fascinating to consider how every detail of daily life, from the type of stone used to line a floor to the careful tending of a brazier fire, contributed to intellectual performance. Some modern observers might scoff, attributing success to mere luck or innate talent, but standing here, you witness the subtle choreography of human ingenuity in action, centuries before modern ergonomic design or climate-controlled study rooms. You notice a minor yet curious detail, a small crack in the floorboards near the scholar's mat. Barely noticeable, but enough to allow a whisper of cold to seep through. Some historians argue that certain halls were intentionally designed to be slightly imperfect, creating microclimates that forced scholars to adjust their position, promoting alertness, a blend of discipline and comfort that seems paradoxical. Others dismiss this as coincidence. You can't help but smile at the thought that even imperfection played a role in sharpening minds. The scholar doesn't appear fazed. He shifts slightly, angling his body toward the warmth, a subtle gesture that ensures continuity of focus. It's a dance as much as a study session, a balancing act between the elements and the mind, one that modern test takers hunched under fluorescent lights might never experience in such a tactile, alive way. Outside, the wind whips the snow into swirling patterns against the hall's lattice windows, and you feel the contrast between the harshness of the world beyond and the controlled warmth beneath your scholar's knees. There's a rhythm to this scene, a push and pull between challenge and comfort, body and intellect, tradition and adaptation. You can almost sense the invisible conversations between past and present, the centuries of scholars who have relied on the same principle, that a warm body supports a clear mind. It reminds you of the enduring human need to manipulate the environment in subtle ways to sustain performance, whether through heated floors, insulated walls, or carefully calibrated modern offices. Even small interventions, like a precisely placed stone or a brazier fire tended to perfection, can transform endurance and creativity. That's the examination progresses. You observe a fleeting smile cross the scholar's face as he completes a particularly challenging section. Perhaps it's the satisfaction of solving a problem long rehearsed, or perhaps it's the quiet assurance that the floor beneath him is faithfully holding the heat just where he needs it. There's a gentle elegance in the scene, the measured breathing, the rhythmic scratching of brush against paper, and the warmth rising through his body in waves that steady and inspire simultaneously. The day stretches on, but you sense that the scholar's endurance, cultivated through hours and years of warm floor study sessions, remains steadfast. You note with a quiet amusement that, while centuries separate you from this moment, the universal pleasure of being comfortably warm while working persists. The floor, like a wise mentor, remains constant, nurturing thought and body alike. By mid-afternoon, the scholar finishes his work, laying down the brush and closing the scroll with a careful hand. You watch him rise slowly, knees grateful for the heat that has carried him through hours of sitting, and you feel a sense of reverent admiration. The state examination, daunting and cold as it may have been, was endured successfully, and much of that quiet triumph is owed to the invisible partner beneath his feet. You glance at the subtle glow of residual warmth emanating from the floor, and it feels almost alive. A reminder that human ingenuity can transform even the coldest circumstances into a cradle of thought. Some accounts claim the scholar walked home on that icy afternoon with a small spring in his step, the memory of heated floors still lulling his muscles into a gentle comfort that mirrored the pacification of intellectual achievement. Finally, as you step outside with him, leaving the examination hall behind, the sun dips lower in the sky, casting long, cool shadows across the frozen courtyard. You feel the chill bite anew, yet the memory of the warm floors, the carefully tended ink, and the rhythm of the scholar's study remain with you. You take a deep breath, imagining the warmth seeping into your own fingers and toes, and you recognize how profoundly simple, thoughtful design can shape endurance, thought, and even joy. There's a lingering sense of quiet celebration in this realization. The warmth beneath, once merely a tool of comfort, is in truth a collaborator in intellect, a silent, steady presence that has endured for generations. As you walk beside the scholar toward the home, waiting nearby, you carry with you a subtle, soft glow of understanding that the coldest tests can be met with preparation, patience, and a little help from beneath your feet. You follow the scholar out of the formal examination halls and down the winding, narrow streets toward the countryside, where a small, humble home awaits him. Tucked between snow-laden rice paddies and frost-kissed wooden fences, the crisp air brushes against your cheeks, carrying the faint scent of pine from nearby hills, and you notice how the sun reflects off the icy surfaces, making the world sparkle like scattered jewels. There's a peculiar sense of peace here, a contrast to the tense concentration of the state examinations, and you realize that even after such mentally grueling experiences, the scholar's journey back home is an extension of preparation, reflection, and, in some subtle ways, warmth. You step softly across the courtyard, the snow crunching underfoot, and catch sight of his family waiting near the entrance, their breath fogging in the cold, their eyes lit with anticipation and a hint of pride. This home is modest, not the ornate hall of scholars or the palace corridors you've glimpsed before, yet it hums with an understated ingenuity, where comfort and survival blend in simple, ingenious ways. Inside, you feel the sudden difference as you step over the threshold. The room is small, but it exudes warmth from the carefully maintained ondol beneath the floorboards. You can almost sense the living network of stones and channels beneath, radiating heat into the room, wrapping around the legs and lower body like a gentle embrace. The scholar removes his outer robes, revealing layers that hint at the day's cold, and you watch as he kneels beside a low wooden table, the warmth from the floor immediately grounding him. There's a certain intimacy in this domestic scene that reminds you of countless evenings you've spent in cozy corners, yet it's suffused with centuries of accumulated knowledge about how warmth shapes thought, focus, and even mood. The scholar's mother begins to adjust small fire tunnels beneath the floor, using folk techniques passed down through generations, moving small stones here, redirecting a little smoke there, and you notice her movements are fluid, precise, almost ritualistic, a dance perfected over decades. It's fascinating the way ordinary families adapted the same principles that palace engineers used, proving that ingenuity need not be grand to be profound. You wander further into the room, observing the subtle artistry of the flooring, the way soil is layered over stone, the gentle slope that allows heat to flow evenly, and the clever positioning of tiny vents to maximize warmth in certain areas. It all seems meticulous, yet natural, like the home itself is alive. Breathing slowly with a rhythm of warmth, the scholar's younger siblings crawl over the floor, giggling, their small hands pressing into heated spots. their cheeks flushed with comfort. You feel a quiet amusement imagining a modern office full of children trying to stay entertained on a heated tile floor while adults sip coffee nearby. Yet here, it's not just play, it's education and bodily comfort. A subtle conditioning for focus, an unconscious lesson in thermal intuition. Historians still debate how widespread such precise folk adaptations were, whether they were the ingenuity of a few families or a common practice in rural Korea. But observing this household, you lean toward the latter. The warmth underfoot seems integral to daily life, a hidden scaffold supporting both body and mind. Dinner preparations begin, and the aroma of simmering rice and braised vegetables mingles with the faint scent of smoke lingering from the hearth. You watch as the scholar helps stir the pot, his fingers momentarily brushing the warm stones beneath the floor as he shifts weight, balancing heat and movement. It's a delicate choreography, almost imperceptible, yet deeply connected to the ondol system itself. You chuckle softly, thinking of modern equivalents, standing on a heated mat while boiling pasta or kneading dough, small pleasures that echo ancient wisdom, though few would trace the lineage back to Joseon era ingenuity. Meanwhile, his parents engage in quiet conversation about tending the fire tunnels, a subtle guidance of airflow and embers, and you realize that domestic life in this household is inseparable from a careful understanding of thermodynamics. It's not science in the lab sense, but a profound tactile mastery of heat, environment, and comfort. As night begins to settle, you notice the soft glow of lanterns reflected in frost-covered windows. The scholar retreats to a corner of the room where a small wooden desk stands over the warmed floor. He unrolls paper, sharpens his brush, and prepares for a few hours of reflection, not formal study, but review, practice, and the gentle sharpening of knowledge. The ambient warmth of the ondol flows through his legs, easing tension and inviting prolonged focus. You observe how he periodically presses a hand against the floor, almost unconsciously, as if to remind himself of the source of his endurance and clarity. The scene strikes you as profoundly human. Warmth is not merely physical comfort but an active participant in intellectual life, a companion that works in tandem with mind and body. Some scholars argue that such daily interactions with heated floors subtly trained the body to withstand extended periods of stillness and concentration, a hypothesis that historians still discuss. Occasionally debated with fervor over manuscripts and temple records, you notice the faintest crack in one corner of the floor, patched with mud and small stones, evidence of wear over many winters. The mother briefly checks the area, adjusts a few stones, and the heat seems to spread more evenly once again. You can't help but smile at the thought that even imperfection, carefully tended, contributes to comfort. There's an echo of what you've seen in examination halls. In more formal settings, warmth is malleable, adjustable, a responsive companion to human need. The scholar sits cross-legged, writing with measured strokes, a quiet intensity in his eyes. Outside, wind rattles the wooden shutters, carrying flakes of snow against the window pane. Yet inside, the temperature remains steady, predictable, and soothing. You realize that this small domestic mastery is as crucial to the scholar's mental acuity as the ornate systems and palaces, a humbling reminder that profound ingenuity is often quietly embedded in everyday life. Occasionally, the younger siblings wander close, stretching over the warm floor with sleepy eyes, and you note the subtle ways the family navigates space and heat. One child rests a head briefly against the heated floor, sighing softly in contentment, and you feel a tender amusement imagining modern children flopping onto a heated car seat. The parallels across time suddenly, charmingly obvious. This scene is warm not only in temperature but in emotion, care, routine, and subtle guidance coalescing into a living system of comfort and focus. The scholar's careful awareness of his body, his interaction with the floor, and the rhythmic, almost meditative act of writing bring a gentle tempo to the room, one that you could imagine being mirrored in households across Joseon era Korea, each family adapting principles of ondol to their own needs. The night deepens, and the household grows quieter. The scholar takes a brief pause, his brush resting on the inkstone, eyes half closed, feeling the residual heat spreading from his legs through his core. You notice how this simple warmth seems to extend into a kind of mental ease, a softening of edges that allows thought to flow more freely. There's a certain universality in this observation. Centuries later, modern ergonomics and heated chairs would aim for similar outcomes. Yet here, it's intuitive, honed through generations of observation, trial, and familial knowledge. Some historians argue over whether rural ondol adjustments influenced palace designs or vice versa, a debate that continues to color discussions of technological diffusion. Yet in this moment, the scholarly and domestic realms feel seamlessly intertwined. Finally, the family prepares for sleep. Mats are laid over the heated floors, blankets arranged carefully, and the scholar stretches lightly before kneeling to bow in gratitude for another day's endurance and learning. You notice the gentle glow of warmth pooling beneath the bedding, a quiet, persistent comfort that will carry them through the night. The fire tunnels have been adjusted, embers stoked to maintain even heat, and the room hums softly with a rhythm that lulls the body into calm readiness. You feel a gentle sense of admiration, the practical knowledge of heat management, passed through generations, transforms daily life into an intimate dance of care, ingenuity, and endurance. The scholar closes his eyes, the warm floor cradling him, and the room settles into the soft hush of nighttime. The chill of winter kept firmly at bay by centuries of careful, tactile wisdom. You step outside once more, feeling the first bite of winter seeping into your bones. The northern winds arrive with authority, bending bare branches and stirring the snow into swirling clouds that dance across the landscape. You hug your robe tighter, the fabric barely holding back the chill, and notice how even the smallest patches of ice glisten like tiny mirrors, reflecting the pale winter sun. In this stark cold, the importance of the ondol beneath the homes of villagers and scholars alike becomes suddenly and vividly clear. You follow the scholar as he navigates the path back to a small cluster of rural dwellings. Each roof heavy with snow, the streets almost deserted except for the occasional clatter of a traveler's boots. You can almost hear the wind whispering secrets of endurance and resilience, teasing your ears with the frozen breath of a winter long remembered, and the contrast between the outdoor chill and the warmth waiting within these homes is profound. As you approach the first house, you can feel the radiating heat from the ondol, even through the wooden floor at the threshold. The family has stoked the fire tunnels earlier, ensuring a steady flow of warmth throughout the main room. You watch as they carefully place small stones into the channels, adjusting embers with precision. A folk method that may seem simple but is honed through generations of experience. There's an almost musical quality to their movements, the faint clink of stone and the soft hiss of smoke echoing in rhythm with the wind outside. You notice the children pressing their hands against the heated floor, their laughter muffled by scarves and woolen hats, their tiny bodies already accustomed to the subtle ways in which warmth shapes endurance and mood. A modern comparison crosses your mind. Heated car seats or underfloor heating in luxury apartments, yet here, the practice is not about luxury but survival, attentiveness, and comfort in the harshest of conditions. Historians still debate the extent to which these folk techniques were standardized or improvised, but observing the delicate balance here, it's clear that practical knowledge prevailed over theory. Inside, the warmth is immediate and enveloping. You feel it creeping up from your feet, spreading softly along your legs and into your torso, a gentle reassurance against the persistent bite of the northern wind. The scholar kneels near the center of the floor, eyes half closed, feeling the heat pulse beneath him. You watch as he shifts slightly, allowing the warmth to seep into different muscles. A subtle practice of bodily comfort that likely helps sustain long hours of study and reflection. The family moves around him with a quiet efficiency, tending to pots of soup and small fires in the kitchen, their movements choreographed by necessity and familiarity. You can almost hear the whispered conversations, the delicate exchange of guidance about airflow and embers, small adjustments that ensure the house retains even warmth throughout the night. The ingenuity of these folk methods is striking. Using small changes in stone placement or ember positioning, they regulate heat in ways that modern thermostats can barely replicate, blending intuition with centuries of observation. The wind outside howls through the gaps in wooden shutters, a reminder that this is not a mere convenience but a lifeline. You see one small section of the floor has cracked slightly from frost, evidence of past winters when the cold pushed the limits of the materials. The mother gently pries up a few boards, adjusts a layer of mud beneath, and the warmth flows evenly once again, demonstrating an almost instinctual knowledge of the thermal system. The scholar nods in quiet approval, returning to his low desk where he traces calligraphy across paper, the brush gliding almost meditatively, each stroke assisted by the gentle encouragement of heat from below. You notice how this simple comfort allows for a fluidity in motion and thought, a harmony between body and mind that might be lost in the stiff, frozen cold of an unheated room. There's a subtle poetry in the way these daily interactions with the ondol guide life rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat beneath the floor. Children scurry across the room, seeking the warmest patches, and you chuckle softly as one tiny hand accidentally touches a residual ember, eliciting a squeal and a quick retreat to safety. The scene is endearing, familiar, a mix of mischief and survival instinct, and it reminds you that warmth in this context is as much about teaching awareness and adaptation as it is about comfort. You think of modern heating technology again, the convenience, the digital controls, and realize how tactile and intuitive the experience here is. Each adjustment, each shift of a stone, each careful redistribution of embers, contributes to a subtle understanding of the house's thermal personality, a knowledge the family carries in their movements, speech, and posture. Scholars may debate how widespread such precise adaptations were in rural regions, but here, you see the undeniable evidence of skill passed quietly through daily practice. The scholar pauses for a moment, looking toward the window where snow swirls in thick flurries. He rubs his hands together, feeling the residual heat from the floor against his palms, and you sense the almost meditative rhythm of living with and through warmth. You realize that the ondol here is more than infrastructure, it is a living companion to the household, responsive, generous, and subtly demanding attention. You note the faint sound of embers shifting in the tunnels, a whisper of life beneath the surface, a reminder that even in the harshest cold, the house itself participates in survival. Some historians continue to argue whether the innovations of palace engineers influenced rural practices directly or if similar methods arose independently, a debate that lingers amid manuscripts and oral traditions. Yet the evidence of practical mastery here seems undeniable. Night deepens, and the family gathers for the evening meal. Kneeling over the heated floor with bowls of steaming rice and seasoned vegetables, the scholar's eyes reflect the soft glow of lanterns as he partakes. Pausing occasionally to press a palm against the floor, feeling the heat steady him, you notice how subtle shifts in posture and contact with the warm stones seem almost instinctive, a bodily language of comfort and endurance. Outside, the wind slaps against the eaves, rattling shutters, but inside, a calm, steady warmth prevails. You reflect on how different this is from modern insulation. No fans, no electronics, just careful orchestration of fire, stone, and airflow, combined with an intimate understanding of one's home. There is a certain poetry in this, a simple elegance that speaks to centuries of adaptation and observation. After dinner, the scholar returns to his study area, unrolling scrolls and laying out paper in preparation for reflection and writing. The glow of the embers in the tunnels beneath the floor provides a gentle, constant presence, a subtle encouragement to linger longer in thought without discomfort. The younger children nestle near the warmest patches of floor, some drifting off into sleep, the heat gently lulling them into drowsiness. You watch as the scholar dips his brush into ink, the movements slow and deliberate, and notice how the warmth allows for relaxed, yet focused execution. The floor silently supporting both mental and physical activity. Historians often debate whether rural families understood the full principles behind such heat management, or if their knowledge was purely empirical. But the results, comfort, endurance, and harmony speak for themselves. Finally, as the household prepares for bed, mats are laid over the warmed floor, blankets carefully arranged, and the scholar stretches before kneeling in quiet gratitude for another day endured. The warmth beneath is steady and generous, a comforting pulse that will persist through the long, cold night. You feel a quiet reassurance in the way the room settles, a soft hum of heat and habitation that mirrors the steady rhythm of life itself. The fire tunnels have been attended to, embers stoked appropriately, and the household exhales into the calm embrace of night. There is a gentle poetry in this scene. The northern winds may rage, the frost may crack the floor, yet with care, ingenuity, and generations of observation, life continues, supported by the quiet warmth beneath one's feet, a subtle testament to the resilience of ordinary households across time. The next morning, you follow the quiet path leading to a cluster of low rattan rectangular houses, the smoke from their chimneys drifting lazily into the crisp air. There's a gentle stillness, punctuated by the occasional caw of a crow or the soft crunch of frost underfoot. As you step closer, you notice the difference in floor heights, the subtle variations hinting at careful engineering beneath the surface, a result of generations of trial, error, and ingenuity. Today, you are going to witness the quiet improvements that Joseon engineers made to the ondol system, the subtle but clever refinements that allowed heat to flow more evenly, last longer, and require less fuel. The thought of these advancements feels almost like peeking behind the curtain of time itself, watching craftsmen and scholars debate and experiment, adjusting tunnels, stones, and airflow with a patience that seems almost alien in our instant gratification age. You imagine yourself kneeling beside them, your fingers tracing the smooth edges of stones, feeling the residual warmth of yesterday's embers, sensing the dialogue between human hand and material that shaped comfort and survival alike. You enter a house where an older engineer is crouched beside the fire tunnel, gently adjusting the alignment of the stones that form its base. Each stone is placed with intention, its angle affecting how heat will rise and linger across the room. You notice the engineer pausing occasionally, examining the small channels with a level of focus that borders on reverence. The floor here is a silent map of experimentation. Some tunnels widened for greater airflow, others narrowed to conserve heat, slight curves added to encourage even distribution. It strikes you that these were not merely practical solutions, but a form of artistry, a subtle choreography where physics met intuition, and warmth became a medium of both comfort and contemplation. You can almost hear the hushed debates among engineers, some arguing for larger tunnels to maximize heat, others insisting that narrower, longer channels preserved it more efficiently. Historians still debate whether the palace engineers' designs influenced rural homes directly, or if similar innovations emerged independently. A mystery that persists in manuscripts and oral histories. The engineer gestures for you to kneel closer, and you feel the warmth rising from a section recently modified with a slight slope. Your fingers brush over the floor, and you notice the difference. Heat reaches your hands faster, flows more smoothly, lingering where before it would dissipate too quickly. This small adjustment, almost imperceptible to the untrained eye, is the culmination of countless experiments, trial and error sessions, and subtle refinements over decades. You can imagine long evenings of note-taking, sketches, and gentle argument. Scholars and craftsmen sipping thin tea as they watched how heat spread across tiles, soil, and stone. In this sense, the ondol is not just a heating system, it is a chronicle of thought, ingenuity, and collaboration, encoded in stone and soil. The warmth beneath your palms feels like a conversation across time, a dialogue between the engineer's intent and the home's response, reminding you that even in the coldest winters, human cleverness can bend the environment to its needs. Moving through the house, you observe multiple rooms where slight variations in floor construction yield subtly different experiences of heat. One room is warmer near the center, perfect for study, while another is ideal for rest and sleep. You notice how the engineers seem to have anticipated the activities that would occur in each space. Narrower channels beneath sleeping areas retain long-term warmth. Wider channels beneath communal spaces allow for faster heating. You catch glimpses of their experimental notebooks, pages filled with sketches of tunnels, stone placements, and airflow directions, each page representing hours of meticulous observation. The engineer's work is quiet and understated, yet its impact is profound. You can almost hear the whisper of embers in the tunnels, the subtle shift of heated air, a sound that resonates like a lullaby for those who understand it. Scholars of history still debate the exact chronology of these improvements and the influence of regional variations. Yet the ingenuity and persistence embedded in these systems are indisputable. As you follow a particularly intricate floor system into a small study room, you see a young apprentice tracing the engineered pathways with his fingers, memorizing their twists and turns. He adjusts small stones with the precision of someone learning a dance, a careful choreography of heat management that has been passed down from master to student for generations. You watch as he tilts a tile slightly, then retreats to feel the effect, noting how the heat rises and pulls differently. There's a quiet joy in this, a mixture of learning, experimentation, and discovery. Not unlike watching a child figure out a new puzzle in modern times. Only here, the stakes are warmth, comfort, and mental clarity through winter. Occasionally, the apprentice exchanges nods with the older engineer, silent affirmation of a successful adjustment, their understanding of thermal flow almost intuitive, a language without words. Some historians argue that rural families may have replicated these refinements without formal instruction, suggesting a shared folk intelligence. Though the precise paths of knowledge transfer remain debated, you step back to observe the house as a whole, noting how the improved floor system seems to harmonize with the architecture. Low ceilings retain heat, thick walls insulate, and the tunnels beneath ensure that each room reaches its intended temperature efficiently. The modifications are subtle, almost invisible to the casual observer, yet their effect is tangible, the warmth balanced, comforting, and consistent. You notice a small detail, a slight rise in one corner that directs heat toward the scholar's mat, a reminder that every improvement was deliberate. A fusion of empirical testing and keen observation. You can imagine debates among engineers about the optimal slope, the ideal width, or the best stone placement, discussions that may have extended late into the night, with embers glowing beneath their knees and ideas flowing as freely as the heat itself. The scholar's writings hint at these exchanges. Yet the exact methods are sometimes lost to time, a puzzle that keeps historians intrigued and occasionally divided. The smell of soot and warmed stone mingles in the air, creating an olfactory memory almost as vivid as the visual impact of the refined floors. You notice a small, previously unheated corner where the engineer tests a new stone alignment. Watching how the embers respond and how quickly the heat spreads. The adjustment is tiny, a fraction of a handspan, but the effect is noticeable. Warmth reaches a previously cool corner, creating a microclimate that allows for more flexible use of the room. You reflect on how modern heating often relies on technology and electronics. Yet here, subtle manual adjustments, grounded in careful observation and experience, yield the same efficiency. There's a quiet elegance to this method, a meditative attention to detail that seems almost lost in contemporary times. Engineers and historians alike marvel at the ingenuity, yet debates continue about whether such precise refinements were widespread or reserved for particularly prosperous or strategically important homes. Evening falls, and the shadows lengthen across the floor, highlighting the subtle undulations and improvements. The scholar returns, placing paper and ink near the warmest section, already adjusting his mat to optimize contact with the heat. You watch him pause occasionally, tracing the contours with his fingers, acknowledging the engineer's work with small nods of appreciation. The room hums with quiet energy, warmth, observation, and thought coexisting in perfect balance. You notice the family moving around the house, aware of these improvements, taking advantage of every slight nuance in heat distribution, an elegant choreography that blends life, labor, and knowledge into a cohesive whole. The gentle, persistent glow beneath your feet feels almost alive, a reminder of how human ingenuity can shape comfort and cognition alike. Finally, as night settles fully, the apprentice and the older engineer kneel together near the embers. quietly reviewing the day's adjustments and noting observations in ink. You realize that the improvements you've witnessed are not merely technical. They represent an ongoing dialogue across generations, a subtle inheritance of knowledge encoded in stone, mud, and fire. Even as the northern winds howl outside, the house maintains a serene warmth, a living testament to centuries of thoughtful refinement. The engineer leans back, satisfied, and you feel the slow, steady pulse of heat beneath your feet, a gentle reassurance that ingenuity and care persist, quietly improving lives in ways both practical and poetic. Historians still debate the precise origins and influence of these innovations, yet the warmth you feel is undeniable, a subtle proof that thoughtful, incremental improvement endures. The night draws to a soft close. You kneel on the floor one last time, feeling the gentle residual heat as it ebbs and flows beneath you. The northern winds rage outside, but within these walls, warmth persists, steady, comforting, and quietly triumphant. The engineer's work, the apprentice's learning, the scholar's study, all converge into this serene moment, a testament to quiet human ingenuity. You exhale slowly, letting the warmth seep fully into your body, a gentle lullaby of heat, effort, and care. The echoes of debate, refinement, and subtle experimentation fade into the night, leaving only a soft, steady pulse beneath your feet. You step lightly across the threshold of a royal palace, and the heat from the ondol beneath the polished wooden floor greets you like a warm embrace. The air is dense with the faint scent of charcoal and smoke, mingling with the subtle perfume of ink and parchment left from scholars' nightly toil. You can feel the difference immediately. This is not the modest, carefully rationed warmth of a countryside home, but an expansive, deliberate heat designed to envelop the entire room, to coax both body and mind into comfort. You imagine yourself walking barefoot along the hall, the heat rising evenly underfoot, fingers brushing the edges of the smooth floorboards, and the sensation is almost like a luxurious foot massage, one that has been perfected over centuries. You chuckle softly, thinking, if modern spas knew about this, they'd be out of business. Scholars of the Joseon era, while focused on civil service exams and Confucian philosophy, certainly had their creature comforts, and the ondol here was no mere necessity. It was a statement of refinement, an artful engineering marvel that blended practicality with subtle prestige. Historians still debate whether this sophisticated system in royal quarters directly influenced rural homes or the countryside adopted it in a more improvisational manner. Yet there's no denying the domino effect of ingenuity spreading across the land. As you wander deeper into the palace, you notice rooms specifically designed for scholars to study. Each floor meticulously tuned for optimal warmth. Mats are placed in strategic spots where heat pools, allowing those seated to remain comfortable for hours, long into the night, grinding ink and composing essays by candlelight. The engineers had learned from centuries of trial and error. A slight adjustment in a tunnel's width, a minuscule rise in the floor slope, could transform the thermal experience of an entire room. You imagine a young court scholar, quill in hand, fingers resting on the warm wood, pausing to consider the philosophical intricacies of Confucian texts. He might glance at the ceiling beams, catching shadows that dance in the firelight, and you sense that the undisturbed warmth beneath him is not just a luxury, but a tool, allowing his mind to wander, to process, to reflect. Some tales suggest that the ondol in royal chambers could get so warm that visiting foreign envoys complained, their expressions a mixture of awe and bewilderment. One particularly humorous account recounts a delegation from a neighboring kingdom fanning themselves furiously, exclaiming that the floors might as well be a literal sauna. You grin at the thought, imagining their powdered faces glistening, as if the palace were in on a playful secret, challenging outsiders to embrace Korean ingenuity, fully or sweat profusely in the attempt. Continuing through the palace, you see a series of interconnected rooms, each showcasing slight variations in their ondol designs. One room is primarily for writing and study, its floor channels designed to retain heat steadily over several hours, while another serves as a social area, where a broader network of tunnels allows the floor to warm quickly for visitors, yet cools efficiently when needed. The adaptability is remarkable. Engineers had mastered not only the mechanics of heat, but its orchestration across spaces for different human activities. You notice small brass inlays, marking key positions for furniture or scholar mats, subtle cues to ensure maximum comfort. It strikes you that, in many ways, this attention to detail mirrors the modern concept of smart homes, though here, the intelligence lies in stone, soil, and fire, not circuits or sensors. You can almost hear the quiet laughter of engineers who understood the irony. Their programmable heating required no electricity, no app, just careful observation, centuries of knowledge, and a love for the subtle, almost imperceptible dance of warmth. Walking toward the palace's kitchen and service corridors, you detect the hum of a much larger ondol network, designed not only for comfort but also for functionality. Food preparation areas and service rooms are heated differently, with faster rising warmth to keep ingredients at optimal temperature and cooks nimble in cold months. You realize that the royal ondol system was a masterclass in thermal zoning, a practice historians now note as evidence of highly advanced spatial planning. Some accounts suggest that certain corridors were deliberately overheated as a deterrent for overzealous foot traffic during ceremonial processions. Though this is still a matter of debate among scholars, you imagine palace staff tiptoeing down these hallways, careful to avoid slipping, while secretly appreciating the comforting warmth that made long winter shifts less grueling. The integration of both comfort and function reveals the dual nature of these improvements: practicality interwoven with luxury, necessity married to artistry. You pause in a small side chamber, where a young scribe adjusts his mat, noting how the heat from the floor aligns perfectly with his study materials. His fingers, slightly stained with ink, linger on the warm surface as if drawing energy from it, a physical grounding that allows thought to flow freely. In this room, the ondol is slightly over-engineered, its tunnels narrower and slightly more insulated than in other rooms, ensuring minimal heat loss. You can imagine centuries of engineers debating whether to prioritize rapid warming or long-term retention. Discussions captured in sparse sketches and terse annotations, historians still argue over the precise calculations used and the balance between efficiency and comfort. But the lived experience of warmth beneath feet and mats is undeniable. The scribe pauses to sip from a small cup of hot tea, steam mingling with the faint aroma of charcoal, and you notice that this microcosm of warmth seems almost to cradle the room itself. A gentle cocoon for reflection and study, the palace garden is now bathed in late afternoon sunlight, yet you can feel the lingering influence of the ondol, even near the edges of the stone-paved corridors. Stones retain residual heat, radiating softly, and the gardeners, sweeping leaves and tending bonsai, seem subtly attuned to these thermal nuances. You notice a small plaque indicating an experimental tunnel beneath a pavilion, an area where engineers tested the effectiveness of different stone types and soil compositions. It's fascinating to consider how a single refinement choosing one type of stone over another could influence how heat persisted through multiple rooms, a lesson in patience, observation, and material understanding. Some scholars still debate the degree to which these experiments informed widespread palace construction or remained confined to experimental wings, a minor historical mystery that adds charm to the story of human ingenuity that as twilight deepens. You wander into a larger hall used for gatherings and examinations. The floor here is radiant, a testament to refined engineering. Wide channels ensure fast heat distribution for large groups, while carefully sloped tunnels prevent cold spots even along the periphery. You imagine an audience of scholars, nobles, and officials seated in quiet concentration, the warmth beneath their feet steady and reliable, enhancing focus and alertness. There's a subtle humor in imagining modern exam halls wishing for such efficiency, where students today shiver or sweat under artificial conditions, oblivious to centuries of thermal wisdom beneath them. You notice traces of soot along the tunnel exits, a gentle reminder of countless fires stoked over winters, each carefully tended to maintain the delicate balance between too much and too little warmth. Engineers' notes, faded yet legible, hint at long-standing debates. Some advocated for wider tunnels to accelerate heating, others for narrower paths to conserve embers. Both schools of thought left a legacy, blending into a system that would influence Korean architecture for centuries. Night falls fully, and the palace glows softly with interior light, each room exuding a comforting, persistent warmth. You follow the subtle radiance beneath your feet, imagining generations of scholars and engineers who walked these halls, testing, adjusting, and perfecting the experience of heat. The foreign envoy's complaint about excessive warmth echoes in your mind, a humorous reminder that innovation is sometimes ahead of its time, appreciated differently depending on perspective. As you settle on a low mat near the hearth, the residual heat embraces your body, quieting your mind, smoothing out tension, and inviting reflection. You realize that the ondol system, while utilitarian in origin, has become a medium for cultural continuity, scholarly contemplation, and subtle amusement alike. The palace, in its quiet majesty, stands as a living monument to human ingenuity, where warmth spreads not only beneath floors but across centuries of knowledge, shaping comfort, cognition, and even humor. Finally, you lean back, the soft hum of heat beneath your body blending with the faint whispers of the palace night. You exhale slowly, feeling the lingering warmth seep into every joint, a gentle reassurance that comfort, thought, and innovation are inseparably entwined. The story of these ondol systems, their spread across land and social strata, their influence on both humble homes and royal palaces, becomes a lullaby, a whispered meditation on the quiet power of human ingenuity. Even the centuries-old debates, the trials and errors, the playful complaints of end fade into this gentle, steady pulse beneath your feet. A reminder that warmth, both literal and intellectual, has the power to endure. The night air outside may be cold, the winds sharp, but here, in this palace of quiet innovation, you are held in a gentle, radiant cocoon. A space where history, ingenuity, and comfort meet in perfect harmony, and where the stories of those who came before can lull you softly towards sleep. You take a deep, almost reverent breath as you step into a quiet, modern home, and immediately you sense the warmth beneath your feet. It's subtle, steady, and comforting. A quiet pulse running through the polished floors. A gentle echo of centuries of ingenuity that began in the Joseon ondol systems. You move slowly across the room, barefoot as always, and notice how the heat spreads evenly, seeping into your ankles, your calves, wrapping your body in an almost imperceptible embrace. You smile softly, realizing that although the materials have changed, no more layers of stone and clay, no more stoked charcoal tunnels beneath, the essence remains. You think about the farmers adjusting folk method tunnels in their humble homes, about palace scholars sweating through layers of garments in rooms intentionally overheated, about engineers meticulously testing every angle and slope of stone floors. And somehow, all of it has converged into this quiet, modern convenience. It's warm, yes, but it carries with it the echoes of human effort, thought, and subtle humor. You chuckle lightly, imagining a 21st century visitor complaining that the floor feels too warm while our ancestors in heavy robes would have been endlessly grateful. You pause near a living room table, tracing your fingers along its surface, noting the gentle hum beneath, a modern reminder of the centuries-old pursuit of comfort and clarity. It's fascinating to consider how an ancient system designed to support concentrated study and thoughtful reflection now functions in ways that seem mundane, almost invisible, yet profoundly human. You feel a connection to those Joseon scholars, imagining them crouched on mats, quill in hand, fingers warmed by the same principle. Though realized now through contemporary materials, there's a strange satisfaction in this continuity, in how the abstract concept of warmth has traveled through time, evolving from heated clay floors to radiant panels under sleek hardwood, yet still serving the same basic purpose: to nurture thought, comfort, and presence. Some historians still debate how directly the designs of ancient ondols influenced modern radiant heating systems, while others argue that the principles spread more diffusely, absorbed through centuries of observation and adaptation. Either way, you feel it underfoot, an unbroken line from past to present, tangible and reassuring. Moving toward the hallway, you notice subtle variations in temperature across rooms. The engineers of today, while working with electricity and metal tubing instead of fire and clay, have maintained an astonishingly nuanced control over heat distribution. You step into a bathroom, where the floor is slightly warmer than the surrounding areas, and the sensation is gentle, inviting you to linger. You think of stories from Joseon courts where envoys complained humorously about rooms that were so warm they seemed to rival a sauna. You smile at the irony. Today, even in this quiet, modern setting, we still strive to get it just right, balancing warmth for comfort without ever overwhelming the senses. The floor beneath your toes hums softly, and in that hum, you can almost hear whispers of long-dead engineers and scholars, their meticulous adjustments and endless debates echoing through the ages. You notice how the modern system, though electrically powered, still mirrors the subtle art of heat management that began with carefully calculated slopes, tunnel widths, and floor layers in clay and stone, reminding you that human ingenuity, once sparked, rarely disappears. You wander into the kitchen, drawn by the faint aroma of evening tea steeping nearby, and you feel the warmth beneath your feet supporting every step. In this room, it's easy to imagine the parallel with a Joseon kitchen, where service tunnels under the floor kept ingredients at an ideal temperature and cooks nimble despite bitter winter winds. It's amusing to think about how little has changed in terms of our need for comfort while performing daily tasks, though now the means are far less smoky. You think of the farmers you visited centuries ago, shuffling through their folk-adjusted tunnels, careful to maintain enough warmth without overloading their small hearts. And you can't help but smile at the parallel. The human desire for efficiency and comfort persists, unchanged, even when technology advances. Even minor debates about optimal floor temperature, efficiency, or heat retention echo those ancient disputes among engineers and scholars, who tested every possible arrangement for the perfect balance. The lessons of the past, whether whispered through embers or conveyed through modern engineering, persist underfoot, guiding our experience almost invisibly, yet profoundly. Walking slowly back into the living area, you notice the soft shadows cast by evening lamps, the subtle creak of the floor as your weight shifts, and the steady, enveloping warmth beneath you. It's a sensation that invites reflection, centuries of effort distilled into this quiet comfort, a bridge from the past to the present. You let yourself imagine the young scholar preparing for the civil examination, hunched over paper on a mat sat centuries ago, fingers warmed by stoked embers and soot-lined tunnels, struggling against winter's chill while his mind expanded across the pages of Confucian classics, and now, here you are, comfortably standing. The floor beneath silently carrying the legacy forward, allowing your thoughts to drift and settle with ease. Some curious historians still debate the degree to which these principles traveled directly into modern engineering, while others suggest it was a slower, cultural osmosis of ideas. Yet it hardly matters when you feel the continuity in your bones, in your toes, in the calm, gentle radiance beneath you. You kneel briefly on the floor, feeling the heat travel up your legs, and allow your mind to drift toward the quiet cadence of history. You think of all the human hands that shaped this journey. The farmers, the engineers, the scholars, the cooks, even the envoys who humorously complained. You notice how subtly human desires for comfort, for focus, for control over one's environment thread through centuries, adapting to materials and methods, but always striving toward the same experience. Warmth beneath your feet that brings clarity, solace, and quiet reflection. There's an almost meditative quality to it, a gentle pulse that encourages your breath to slow, that encourages your eyes to soften, and your thoughts to flow calmly. You remember the humorous complaints of the intricate folk methods of rural families, and the detailed refinements of palace engineers, all converging into the invisible, quiet system you experience now. It is remarkable how a physical sensation, so simple, carries with it layers of history, culture, and ingenuity, quietly shaping your moment. The house is now bathed in a soft evening glow, and the gentle hum of heat continues underfoot, a subtle reminder that centuries of innovation were always intended to serve human life in the quietest, most sustaining ways. You let your shoulders relax, feeling the lingering warmth seep slowly into every joint, every muscle, every thought. You notice that even the faintest draft from a nearby window fails to penetrate the comfort here, a testament to the careful engineering and the centuries of accumulated wisdom beneath your feet. You imagine the engineers of old, the farmers of modest homes, the scholars hunched over texts, all contributing to this continuous thread of warmth and ingenuity, and you feel a quiet gratitude for their foresight and persistence. Finally, as you sink gently onto a mat, allowing yourself to rest fully, you close your eyes for a moment and appreciate the unbroken lineage of care and thought that stretches from Joseon era ondol systems to the modern radiant floors beneath you. You feel the warmth pulse quietly under your body, soft, steady, reassuring, like a lullaby whispered through centuries. Even as the modern world rushes by outside, inside here, the past and present meet in gentle harmony. The engineers, scholars, and families long gone, in their own way, continue to cradle the human body and mind, guiding comfort, reflection, and calm in each step, each pause, each quiet moment of warmth. You exhale slowly, letting the sensation cradle you, imagining the soft whispers of history fading into a peaceful night, a lullaby of human ingenuity, care, and subtle humor, leaving you perfectly poised to drift into sleep. End of script. Sweet dreams.